at Right Reinvented on Twitter. And we bring people back to the compendium of essays because, as John said earlier, this is not a bumper sticker philosophy. It's easy to say we're going to help more poor people by getting them on a government program. It's a little more involved to say we're going to help them to get off of government programs. The measure of success of any government program should be how few people need it, not the other way around. And we can talk a little bit about that on Twitter and then bring them back to the compendium of essays issue by issue throughout the book.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great way of putting it. I'd one time like to hear a politician campaign not on how many new government programs he's going to create for us, but how many government programs we're going to be able to eliminate because he's going to foster prosperity and individual independence. Jeez, I'm repeating myself, but independence and things like that. It's such a paradigm shift from the usual, left-right political debate we hear every day. Let me ask you guys something, because what you guys are doing, I think, is a little bit more a push back to a more intellectual form of conservatism. I know one criticism I've heard of the right, and I sort of hate using that term because it's such a monolithic term, and I don't like to paint with such a broad brush, but one criticism of the modern, I guess, right-wing movement, for lack of a better term, is that it's not intellectual enough. It's not. It tends to be very partisan and very. Is that something you guys are sort of trying to address or to solve with this as well, John?
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and you're right about the conservative movement in the United States is anything but monolithic. It's diverse in every sense of the word, and that's really, I think, the greatest strength that the movement has. And
but also its greatest weakness, like I said, herding cats sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. But as long as we can sort of, I guess to extend the metaphor, as long as we can herd all the cats into one area and have a conversation, it's important. We're going to be able to come up with real solutions, and that's sort of the dialogue that we hope to spur with this book.
Now, that's certainly something, by the way, talking to two of the authors of the book, Reinventing the Right. You can got a link to you can find it on Amazon. I'm sure if you search for the term Reinventing the Right. I've also got a link up at sayanythingblog.com. If you go there, you can click the link and purchase the book. Chris Tiedeman and John Amble, who are two of the authors. Chris, one thing that I sort of noticed, I helped organize 11 tea parties here in the state of North Dakota over the summer. We had about 15,000 attendees, which I'm fantastically proud of, because when the stoic Scandinavians of North Dakota are in the streets marching, there's a problem, So, but one thing I noticed is that it was there was a lot of very young, sort of more libertarian type conservatives, which I guess I would put myself in that group, and then there were a lot of maybe very socially conservatives, and there was some friction in between there. I mean, even to the point where we had some debates about whether or not we would pray before the Tea Party. We had some debates. I mean, there's some pretty serious fractures, I think, at time within the movement. Did you guys address that at all, or how to sort of unite factions within, I guess, the limited government movement that are sometimes very much at odds when it comes to something like, I don't know, gay marriage? Or other issues like that?
Well, as a stoic Scandinavian from northwest Minnesota, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think the larger point is that again, we're a dynamic movement, and we're going to disagree on issues from time to time, and sometimes we'll be diametrically opposed. I may not agree, and we talk about this in the foreword. John and Rob talk about this in the forward to the book, that we may not agree all of the time, and we're going to have that debate. Just like liberty allows us as a country to debate issues, we're going to debate those issues within the movement. If it's good enough for us as a country to develop better policy, it's good enough for us as a movement to come to a better conclusion. And I think at the end of the day, we have an opposition that we're going to be opposed to, which helps create a dynamic, unified movement. But we're also going to come to policy prescriptions together that we can agree on, and we're going to fight for those. And that's what drives the movement ultimately.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways it's going to be a tough fight. Again, something I noticed in the Tea Party movement, I was having a discussion with a group of them the other day, and I was sitting down talking to these people, and one thing that I've been trying to push. I certainly don't speak for the Tea Party movement. Speaking for myself, one thing that I've been saying that the Tea Party movement, for instance, should do is to funnel itself into the Republican Party process or the Democrat Party process, if that's where they feel more comfortable. But either way, get involved in the process. Help us pick the candidates, because I think that at the end of the day, we need better candidates. We need better leaders is I think what we need. But, these people, I would say, well, why don't you go to your Republican district convention and become a delegate to go to the convention and help us pick candidates? And they said, well, because the conversation started where they weren't happy with our current candidates. We've got a Republican candidate for Senate this year who's not very conservative. I mean, everybody in the state knows this. And they were saying that they weren't very happy that he was the only candidate we had. So my answer to them was, well, why don't you go to get involved in the delegate process? And we may not be able to do a lot this year, but if you get involved with the process, we could pick better candidates, and maybe down the road we can have better candidates. And they said, well, I don't want to go to the conventions either because that'll mean I'm a Republican. So, I mean, the dissatisfaction right now with the Republican Party specifically runs pretty deep. Is that something you guys also talk about in the book? I mean, how do we maybe heal some of those wounds that are out there right now?
Yeah, it's absolutely something that we address in the book. In fact, we start the book. The very first line makes it clear that this isn't a partisan work. It's more one of, I guess, political philosophy, for lack of a better term, because conservatism is not the Republican Party. I mean, the Republican Party is not conservatism. So there's widespread dissatisfaction with the political process as a whole. Throughout the country right now, and we're seeing that certainly in Minnesota and North Dakota as well. The Tea Party movement, I think, sort of embodies that trend of people who are dissatisfied. They want to be involved, but they're just not willing to be involved on behalf of one of the two major parties. As such, that sort of movement, that sort of grassroots enthusiasm for the ideas rather than necessarily the standard political process is huge for us, though. I think that if you do go to any of the Tea Party rallies that are held every weekend, it seems like across the country, you get a lot of people who can agree on at least a few things. Among those, I would say probably chief among those is a recognition that the United States, there's something special about the United States. The level of economic prosperity, military success, political success that we've achieved over the past 230 some odd years is directly attributable to a certain core set of principles that the country was built, that was founded upon. And I think that there's a recognition amongst people who show up for some of these events that, hey, we need to sort of recapture that spirit. We need to sort of re-identify those principles and say these are the ones that are going to guide our policy in the coming years and generations. And I guess my hope is that candidates do start to emerge who reflect that spirit.
Yeah, because candidates, I think, are always products of the people who put them in office. I mean, they're going to do what it takes to get elected, so we need to make it so that the things they have to do to get elected and to stay in office are conservative things. I mean, because really it starts with us. I mean, even that's even an argument I've made against term limits, for instance. I mean, we can have term limits. We're the people who keep sending these idiots back to office every 2 or 4 or 6 years or whatever it is. Maybe we need to vote for better people and find better candidates. I mean, that's my point about all of that. Now, Chris, you said that you guys have some websites, some Facebook, some Twitter set up. Why don't you give us a rundown so people who want to know more about your book, more about what you guys are doing, can go out there and find the information?
Well, first of all, follow us on Twitter at Right Reinvented, at Right Reinvented. Check us out on Facebook. Do a search on Facebook for Reinventing the Right. Find us on Amazon.com. I know you've got the website up on yours. And just real quickly to echo and enhance what you were just talking about, Rob, the world is run by those who show up. You show up every day. Every time you're on the radio, every time you blog. You know, we're attempting to show up. So yeah, please get involved. If you share our values, take a look at the book. Get involved. Get involved in the Tea Party movement. Get involved in the political process. and we'll be better off for it.
All right, John, Chris, thanks for being on the program. I appreciate it, and I look forward to finally getting a chance to read your book.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.